welcome back to the Young Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer McPartland, and this is currently episode number 27. And my guest is.
Yeah, Harsha Gaddipati, co-founder of Slashy, and it's a pleasure to be on the show.
So, my first question is, can you kind of walk us through? Did you have the entrepreneur bug when you were like little, or did it kind of sprout out more so during freshman, sophomore year of college?
Yeah, I would say I probably didn't have the entrepreneur bug when I was like growing up. Yeah, no, like I didn't really try to make my own businesses or anything like that. I kind of just did what I felt like doing, but never really like stuck with something or worked hard enough to call it anything like entrepreneurship for stuff. I got really lucky through like end of high school to college, and a lot of stuff fell in place kind of for how stuff came now. Yeah.
Now, how did you go from college to the Y combination, which I know is a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of idea sharing, so to speak?
Yeah, so I think like I got lucky again when that was like my freshman year of college. I went to Georgia Tech for college, but my freshman year of college, I think my friends were saying, "Oh, there's like these dating things on campus. There's like this thing called the Marriage Pact. There's like Data Match, etc." Because I'm from Wisconsin, like I had friends at like Madison, Milwaukee, Northwestern, etc. in like the area, and I was like, "Why doesn't GT have one of those?" And so we were like, "Why don't we just do it ourselves?" So for fun, I was kind of running this dating thing on campus for like 2 years. It was really fun time just having like thousands of people just like get on it. I was making my own algorithms and stuff. I wasn't doing anything serious. It was just like a fun college thing. I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'd make money or anything from it. But then, yeah, going into my junior year, someone reached out to me and was like, well, you should like try to make this a business. Why don't we like make this like a proper like startup? And I was like, I mean, I guess why not? I mean, it's college. Like, what do I have to lose for things? So that was kind of really like how I got started in that space. And then from there, it kind of snowballed, right? Like, I was working at Amazon in the summer, and I was working on this, and I realized I would work at Amazon for maybe 2, 3 hours a day, and I'd work on the startup for like 10, 12 hours. And it was just like, I still hated those 3 hours I was working at my job that was paying me a lot of money for sure, especially a lot of money for like a 20-year-old. And I was like, yeah, there's like no point in me actually going back to working at Amazon. And then, yeah, I worked on that startup all through like my junior year, which was also my last year of college. But near the end of like junior year, I realized it just wasn't gonna work out. So even though it was really fun, had to shut that one down. And then I come and met some of my new co-founders. They were some of like the smartest people I ever met. And at that time, I was still even considering going back to Amazon because like I don't really have a company or a business. But I think in life, there's also times where you just realize that there's opportunities that will always be there for you, and there's opportunities that if you don't take now, won't be there. And I was just like one of those. I was like, if I don't start a company with these people now, I won't have a chance for it again. And then yeah, from there we got lucky enough to like get some progress and traction, and then we got into like Y Combinator, got some investment money, and yeah, stuff's a lot different now than it was, I guess, like 9 to 12 months ago.
So it's more about like taking advantage of what's
Yeah.
there because you don't know what's going to be there. But how is I don't know a large amount about Y Combinator. So is it kind of like a VC company, or is it kind of like a entrepreneur, like a think tank, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's more of a VC company for sure. Because at the end of the day, they have like maybe like $1 billion on in like investment money they manage and they invest in companies, and they need to return like 5 to 6x that money to the investors. But like, there's still like end goal is to make money, and they like try to push you towards decisions that end up with the company being worth more money and like making money versus like say like a startup accelerator program like I think Maryland has a good one. It's called Shell something. I forget the exact name now off the top of my head, but for a few friends who go to UMD, um and like those ones are more like open. They like let you explore stuff with Y Combinator. It's like once you get in, it's like if I'm like let me just spend 3 years thinking of stuff, they're not gonna be happy because they're like you need to make money, you need to grow this company. Like every decision you need to make is about exponentially growing your company. But on the flip side of it is because they invest in a lot of companies, it does give a college kind of vibe where there's like 100 to 200 other companies that get invested in at the same time. And so you can talk with everyone. Everyone's learning like how to build a company, like how to grow it from that 0 to 1 phase to the 1 to 10. And so there still is like I guess a good community and kind of a think tank energy, but there still is of course always that like top level expectation of you just need to make money and you need to grow as fast as possible.
So is a lot of it test bed where it's you're testing and you're
Yeah.
figuring out what works best company and what doesn't work well, and if this is
Yeah.
beneficial long term for actual sustainable company versus this is a great idea. You don't have the funding, you don't have the team, you don't have anything that's really concrete and really gonna blow up, if you will.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is like most of it's spent testing, but I think it's something you learn too is just that most great startups, it's just always testing. You never can be satisfied with what you currently have because whatever you currently have, someone else can go and make in like the next 2, 3 years, and then you won't last 50 to 100 years. For stuff like I think especially in like the software industry, it's a lot more different. Where like if like Microsoft pushes updates to Excel every year for stuff and so Excel stays there. You don't just have the same product. It's not like maybe the beverage industries where like Coke, for the most part, hasn't changed in the last 20 to 50 years. But if you look at like in Mac now to a Mac 30 years ago, it's like completely day and night in terms of things. So yeah.
And how did you go from Y Combinator to Slashy where you currently are, which is helping to speed up the large language model for Gmail and all that sorts of apps, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was like in Y Combinator when we initially got in, we were already like making like a general AI agent that just gets work done for people. We connected to a bunch of apps like Gmail, Notion, etc., and we're doing work. But what as we saw over time with people using our product was they're using a lot like most people use ChatGPT for stuff where it's like if you have a question, you go and ask it. But if you don't have like a good reason to use Slashy, you won't use it. And we're like, this is like we're like, there's 100 ways Slashy could help you in terms of stuff and like save you time or like do stuff in a way faster than you could ever do it and save you money as well from whatever you're using currently. But people will never realize it because of the blank slate problem of just if someone needs to think of how to use the product, they probably won't use all the features. And so we were like, how do we get this to be something that people integrate more into their lives? And like the answer is not getting people to use it more almost, it's more forcing people to use it more almost. So which is why I kind of went into like this email client where we know people spend 30 minutes a day in the email, usually in like white collar jobs at a minimum, maybe hour to 4 hours at max. And if you can guarantee that much screen time on whatever your agent can do, that means that you have their attention for that long and you can add a lot of value. Like, for example, the stuff like, oh, like you have a bunch of meetings, here's notes on everyone you're meeting with, here's the details. Oh, it's like, here are the emails you missed from the last week. You can be like, oh, you're running late to a meeting. Do you want me to just automatically like, alert that person that you're running 5 minutes late? All these sorts of things that AI can do and will like save people time and be useful that you would never think of asking AI. Making a system where can the AI can tell you automatically just creates a step change almost in like people behavior.
So is part of it kind of having it as a companion or a second step, meaning it's already built into the app or the platform and so that it's already there and you can already use it versus having
Yeah.
back to what you're saying about having to force people to use your app and getting all the user numbers and the user interference.
Yeah, I think so. And it's like really the companion part's important because I think our belief is AI already is good enough to replace a lot of work. The problem is that we don't treat AI like humans. We treat it like previous software, but like previous software was you buy it and it works right away perfectly. Excel works the same 1 year in versus like zero. But current AI things, it's like the more information they know about how you work and your styles, like how do you like color your sheets, how do you write your emails, when do you bold text, etc. You can have an AI model can never know that before you tell it that. It's just too complicated each human. But if you like have like an EA or you hire like a personal assistant, you'll tell them that over like a month. But no, there's no like AI products right now that like designed to have someone teach them for a month in terms of stuff. But by like owning the interface ourselves, like we really want to design this kind of product that people can will spend a month just teaching naturally. Like not necessarily like just like having them talk to like an AI like companion, but just by using the product, it learns over time for a month to really become dynamic and actually like understand someone at their deepest levels.
Now, could there be a way for you to remove the learning aspect of it? Meaning, if I'm a person and I've used, let's say, ChatGPT or Gemini, and the program already knows me very well, and you've entered a lot of information, and so that it's able to build up things that it knows you well. Is there a way for you to put it to another one so that you're able to save the time, and so that it can carry over that information, and so that it's not having to read you're not having to relearn and spend a month or 2 trying to learn how this works and figure out the mechanics, if you will.
Yeah. I think it's like it'll be interesting in the future to see what happens when you integrate with these things. I think it's hard though, still because I think it's something of just people like us as humans are so emotional and we change so rapidly. Is I think an easy example is like if you have friends who like because everyone has that friend when they're meeting a guy or a girl where if they're dating someone new, they like completely change their personality. Like one day they're like into like soccer, whatever, they're into sports. The other day they're just like reading matcha. Oh, sorry, reading books, like drinking matcha, whatever it is in terms of stuff. And I think that's the problem with these things where people are like, if AI could just understand me perfectly right away, it'd be great. But it's like if even like your significant other who's been like married to you for 40 years can't understand you perfectly, what chance does AI have? And so I think there'll always need to be this aspect of technology that learns over time with a user that can, and that's also why I think it's impossible for AI to replace a human at like 100% of level. I think we can get to 90% or 95, but I don't think we can ever get like an AI who can ask the same questions you would in an interview or something because some of those questions that you ask are just completely like vibe based, they're like random that it just would be unfair for it to even expect it to come near.
So kind of like it being original versus it being scripted and the computer already
Yeah.
having thought up prepared questions for here's what you need to ask right away and drive the question point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there are arguments that like AI can figure it out at some point if it just gets more context and more information for stuff. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it goes. I'm not as bullish on that.
Now, being within the AI sector, do you see there being a continuous amount of growth, or do you think that it's going to be the way that it was with the internet, where it's big, but then let's say 15 to 20 years after it kind of dwindles down, and then there was a lot of hype, but then it's kind of normalized, and people are like, well, it's the new norm. You accept it, and then you just move on with your day to day life and carry on.
Yeah, I think everyone in SF right now is thinking it's gonna be a bubble and it's gonna crash in terms of stuff. But I do think it's like I think the internet's a great comparison for it. I don't think it's like the AR bubble where like AR like had this big moment like 10 years ago at Google Glass and now no one even uses it. Like we have Meta Ray Bans, I guess now, but for the most part it was complete bust. Like the metaverse, complete waste of money. I could be proven wrong, I guess. Like we'll see in 10 years if I'm somehow like Zuck turns it around. But right now it looks like a waste of time and money. But with the .com one, you have all these things that fail. Like one of the biggest failures was pets.com. But now if you look at like US consumer spend, most people spend on pets on online marketplaces in terms of stuff and like online stores. And I think it's the same thing that's gonna happen with AI, where it's like we have a lot of money put. The models might not be there fully, or people just aren't used to using AI right yet. Because that's another thing too, is like most people don't even know how to prompt AI right. Like my friend like calls ChatGPT Mr. ChatGPT when he talks to it because he's like, if I give him respect and give him a title, it's gonna be better at me and give me better responses. Like, and that's like he's like a Georgia Tech student. He's probably gonna get a PhD. He's way smarter than I am. And if this is like some of like the smartest people that I know are like that with AI, it's like the average person is nowhere near yet unlocking the full power of AI just because they don't even know how to use AI or talk to it because it's like a new language for things. And I think that's the same thing where it's going to take more than 5 years for us to really get there in terms of general population using AI properly. But the problem is that investors, the markets, VCs, they all price in AI exponentially growing and they need everyone to use it in the next 5 years. They can't wait the 5 to 10 years that it actually takes for culture and technology to like disseminate for stuff, which will probably lead to a crash in the short term. And then, yeah. But yeah, I do agree in like 20 years, it'll be like the internet where it's the new normal.
Now, kind of going off of that, part of one of my questions is it going to be, do you see it as getting integrated within the workforce and like the training, but also the second part to that question is, do you see it kind of taking the critical thinking out of things, meaning you rely solely on the computer to do all your critical thinking versus the opposite, where it helps to make you smarter. Let's say if you're getting your PhD, it helps you and it tells you here's why your master's thesis is correct, and let's say it checkbox everything and it says this is wrong and here's why you need to rethink about it and restructure your thoughts or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think that it's gonna be a benefit for thinking, but I'm worried about the next generation, is what I would say. Is because I think AI is good enough to replace a junior employee at most places, right? For stuff like if I was a junior software engineer, I could use AI and get most of my job done. And that's like true. Like I think when people say that like, oh, AI is better than a junior investor, that probably is true. I don't think it's false, like in terms of stuff. But the problem with that is this assumption is that AI can't get better. Because it goes back into that whole thing I was talking about earlier, where AI doesn't learn for stuff. Like, and the thing is, if I'm like a person a junior software engineer who uses AI to do my work, I'll never get to that point where I can be a senior software engineer if I never actually think for myself. If I know AI knows more than me at system design, that makes sense because it has more research. If I'm 1 year into my job, I'm not going to know as much information. But then if I never go and read up on stuff and learn more things to expand my own like memory, I will never get to that point, and AI will always have that finite thing that isn't as good in terms of things. But on the flip side, for the people who do like not offload all that thinking or do research themselves, I think it'll lead to a speed up of stuff because one of like most of the biggest unlocks we have are when you use creatively apply techniques from different domains into a new domain for stuff. Like really, like there's like two types of I guess like innovation, right? One innovation is vertical innovation where you already in existing field and you just innovate by taking it even further. So like an example of this off the top of my head could be like something like astrophysics, right? For the most part, astrophysics, you're not taking other fields, you're just going more into that same field. There's a reason like there's a bunch of like geniuses in that space. Um, on the other side of things, there's stuff like liquid death, right? They had an innovation where it's like more of a horizontal innovation where you're taking ideas from other spaces and you just make it into an idea that seems quite simple. Like liquid death's just like oh, people don't want to drink at bars now because there's like a lot of more people who are not alcoholic, but they don't want to be known as the person who's sober at a bar. So like, why don't we just make a beer can with water? And it's like not that like complicated of an idea, but no one's applied those concepts into this thing, and now it's $1 billion company. And that's like not something that AI still is good at doing. Like it can't do that horizontal thing or stuff of being like, here's stuff that hasn't occurred before, but this could be a good idea. That's why you still need a human. But AI could go and then research like how do I do this? How does this work? Or like what's the projection to I do this and like find all that stuff and get all that thing done. But to get that creative thought, I think you'll always need a human to come up with it just because fundamentally it's like AI is just not trained to think creatively and for stuff because it's meant to predict data based on what it already exists on for stuff.
How do you see it getting integrated within the workforce or
Y-
within like
Yeah.
certain companies?
Yeah, I think it's gonna just like lead to definitely decent job loss for stuff. Like I don't think it's gonna be a good thing. Like I think like if you're like the problem is with so many junior employees that are not gonna like I just like if I was working like when I was working at Amazon I was lazy. I worked 3 hours a day, like, my manager, like, loved me for some reason, my team loved me, I had great performance reviews, but I would literally, like, skip a day of work sometimes just because 'cause I'd be like, I'll work from home, and I'd be like, I would just not check Slack, I'd be like, "Oh, shoot, I missed the Slack message, I'm sorry," maybe if I saw it, and I would just skip the day, right? And it's like, so you're telling me, like, when I was working a job, would I not use maybe ChatGPT some days? Yeah, I probably would use it a good amount of time, and I probably wouldn't think because 'cause I'd be like, I'd rather just not think, take my paycheck and go. But then at that point, it's like you're gonna get replaced by someone who is willing to like work. Like you'd rather have someone at that point who works 8 hours a day instead of me 3 hours a day, and like will just prompt AI for those 8 hours a day. Because it's like realistically, if I'm using AI anyways, even though in theory I might be a better coder and that stuff, you can't see the difference. It's like, and then at that point, my like highly skilled job becomes less skilled. So then the pay for my job becomes less. And it's good for the company because they can hire more people. They don't need to hire like only these CS graduates from the top 50 schools in the US or something. They can hire any American, maybe not even someone who has a college degree. And I think that's like a bigger thing too is like with factory work and that stuff. Like I went to this talk by someone from Workday. I think like head of AI at Workday. And they're like, oh, like what are your fears with AI? They're like, oh, jobs won't get lost. But then someone was like, what about this like AI making highly skilled jobs low skilled? And she's like, yeah, that's probably true. Like, I actually have no answer for that. Like, we're probably just gonna see like wage reductions because it's like there's a lot of these like repetitive tasks that people learn over time doing that you don't get promoted for necessarily, and other things that AI could learn over time or you could train an AI for, that then becomes someone just goes from being like a master craftsman to just a button pusher. And pushing a button's way easier than actually learning how to do a task. And yeah, I mean, someone will need to push those buttons so those jobs will exist. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's like, it'll be interesting to see how stuff turns out because I mean, I don't know. With everyone says that like every technology shift, there's always new jobs that come out, but like I don't see where those jobs come out. But that also maybe is like the whole point. Maybe there is like a whole new class of jobs that get unlocked.
And maybe part of it is also time. Like we
Mhm.
might not see it at the current moment, but just give
Yeah,
it maybe 3 or 5 years, and then there's going to be a opening within the market or the job field for whatever new thing it is, if you will.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah. I think that's like the fun thing about these things with all these predictions is like you can be wrong and like we could all we're like probably all like so wrong on what's gonna happen for stuff, but we also need like part of like being human is predicting the future.
Unless certain things happen, and then you're like,
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
getting back to what you were saying earlier about like the behavior or the other part, like thinking outside of the box because you can't
Yeah.
fully rely on the computer to do to know everything and to do everything, if you will.
Yeah, I think for that one, it's like another thing that like a big mantra we live by, at least as a startup, is trying to be 80/20. Cause I like wear a lot of different hats just because we're not like a big company where we have 10,000 employees. So it's like for me, if I'm like sending a legal document, I could go and research every single state law that California has. But it makes more sense for me to like 80/20 that and be like, can I find some summaries? Do I think I have enough confidence that this works properly? Of course, like officially on the record, like, yeah, we like make sure everything's above board and legal in terms of these things. Like that was probably a bad example of it, but there's like other examples like that where yeah, you just kind of need to go and do these things. Actually, a better example of this would be like for coding, right? When we're like rendering emails, when we like decide is this email the same as a different email? What AI suggests to do is compare every character in the email to another email, which can take a lot of time for stuff. But like a better way of doing it is just being like, how long is this email versus how long is the other email? And it's like if they don't match, then they're different for stuff. And then like obviously in this second case, there's gonna be times where you have two emails that are different that have the same size. But as like a human who's building this like email product, I know that that actually doesn't happen often and it's not a big deal. But for AI, it's like, oh no, this is like that's like can't be work, right? Because you're gonna like mess up sometimes. And I think that's where like humans really just have this advantage of like this context and understanding just the nuances of stuff that AI can't get as well is that a lot of human rules are very wishy-washy in terms of stuff. And we don't actually like operate like on like black and white rules that often. Like obviously maybe if you're someone who doesn't have as much emotional like intelligence or like maybe you like grew up with like some sort of like mental like neurodivergence in terms of stuff, maybe then it's like you're a lot more black and white. But for the majority of people, we operate mainly in the gray world. Like I can jaywalk and that's completely fine. Like, sure, I break the rule every day, but no one's ever gonna get mad at me. But let's say I steal from a Walmart, that's completely against the rules, right? But then yet stealing doesn't carry much more of a fine than jaywalking does. Why is that? Then if like stealing is such a worse social crime, why is it that stealing $5 usually is like similar punishment to like if you got actually fined for jaywalking? And there's like all these nuances that as humans we have that we can only really understand. And like these are things where creativity comes in and these metrics that AI doesn't. And again, I get the argument that AI will eventually become this super intelligent being and it can understand it. But the problem with that is that for AI to get that good, we need to find a way to benchmark it or tell AI, here's a rubric you can meet to say you're that good. But like, how do you give AI rubric on being like able to jaywalk was not? Like when is it okay to jaywalk was when is it not? Right? It's like okay, it's good to jaywalk, like, if there's no cars coming to hit you, and there's no, like, kids next to you maybe, so you don't influence them, and, like, you make sure that, like, whatever, X, Y, and Z. Or it's like, maybe it's good to jaywalk when the light's turning yellow already, so you know the cars are gonna slow down. You see, like you don't see a BMW or something or, like, a Hellcat or something that you know is gonna, like, speed that light and hit you, etcetera. Like, there's, like, all these, like, complexities that if us as humans can't map black and white rules for. AI can never be trained to learn it, and then AI won't ever like learn it in the future. It just means that us as humans will always provide value in those kind of areas.
Now, how do you kind of apply this like
Yeah.
within your company? Like, is it you and 3 to 5 other people that are kind of like
Mhm.
obviously the founders and the co-founders of the company, but is it a lot of we do a lot of the
Mhm.
the tasks, or is it a lot of onboarding and a lot of bringing on other people to do these tasks while we focus on what we really need to do?
Yeah, yeah. I would say like mostly we do the task in terms of stuff. I don't actually like hire contractors. Maybe in the future we'll hire contractors, but I don't believe in them too much because I think that for the most part, like if I wanted to hire a contractor, say to handle my marketing, either I can do it myself if it's high enough value. If it's not, I could probably find a college student who's willing to do it, who is cheaper than the contractor and probably be better because they care about it. They need it for their job in terms of stuff. And then they also, I don't need to worry about like keeping them on as a full-time employee because they'll probably want to go anyways to like a more traditional job that it is like looking for experience for stuff. And I can train them to speak how I want them to speak for these things. Like, I think it depends. Like, there's different founders who are more, I'm more of a control freak, I would say, probably as a founder, where I'm like, I want to, even if it's someone else's vision, I want to understand their vision. I want to have the ability to be like, change it this way. Like, I don't like to give someone a blank slate and have zero feedback or input. Like, if I'm like, I want to get 1 million views, I want to see how you get 1 million views, and I want to make sure the message meets my message, even if I don't know anything about Instagram Reels in terms of stuff. And with that, I think it's like this hiring like college students is better because especially if it's the first time doing something like that, they don't know actually fully how to do stuff. And you can kind of like imprint your mind onto their thoughts for stuff and mold them more in a way you want to. And you can be like, I want you to learn how to do Instagram Reels in specifically this way versus maybe a consultant would already have like 50 different ways they know how to do it. And sure, they might be better at doing it initially, but over time, that one specific way, this person, this employee is going to get better at just because that's the only way they're learning. That's the only way they're diving deep into versus a consultant still needs to like learn for all their clients, all those ways. So they'll never get as deep.
They're kind of like learning as you go versus bringing on somebody who's an expert to
Mhm.
like accelerate that, if you will.
Yeah. Because also the expert will probably work 20 hours a week and the non-expert will work like 60 to 80 hours.
No, I'll give you a second. Now,
Yeah.
the question that's been left for you is, how do you see kind of like old ways with companies and old tech, but also applying it to new tech and uh, like integrating it within the companies, like people that have done things for years and years a certain way. How do you see like new ways and new technology getting integrated into those rigid ways of thinking or
Yeah.
structured ways, if you will?
I think it'll be a generational change. Like, I don't think like for like old companies, like you need to get people who have grown up with AI to get into leadership roles for it to change. Like there's a lot of companies who still do stuff partly on paper and pen, for example, for stuff, right? And like now they're moving on to like spreadsheets. And then there's like other companies that go from spreadsheets to cloud, etc. But I think like if you're in a really old industry, and also like if you just don't need AI, it's like if a paper and pencil's working, you're making millions. Like why change it for stuff? There's like not much point. But then it's like I think once you get to this new generation where everyone's used to like iPhones, like half the people have not written like on paper more than like an hour a year at this point, right? Like I rarely write anything down on paper except for my own notes because I like taking them. But most of my friends don't even write down notes on paper. So it's like paper and pen will be like actively slower for them than typing in on a computer. So then it makes sense to switch. And I think that's the same thing with these old ones. It's just you can eventually get employees who grew up in schools that are like AI native. Or like every school has these AIs, and then it's like they don't even know how to work without AI, and then you have no choice but to kind of just like bring in AI because your employees are kind of fucked otherwise.
Now, what is your question for the next guest that comes on?
Yeah, let's see. Tough one. I guess, yeah, I mean, right, it's like almost a new year now, so I feel like a good question for them would just be like, what's like one thing you want to like do in 2026 that you didn't do in 2025?
So kind of like a regret a little bit for like
Yeah,
what's something you wish that you didn't do, but something
yeah,
that you want to do in the future, if you will. My last question is: are there 2 to 3 people that you'd recommend that are good fits for the podcast?
yeah. Have you like interviewed like Jason or you from Autosana? They went to Maryland, I think. I'm not sure. Have you? Yeah. Okay. I said like they would be good if you, but it seems like you have interviewed them. I think like there's like from media, he's making like an agentic browser. It's quite cool. There's like then there's like Jason from Eden. Jason, he did doing some cool stuff with email marketing, and there's Bob from Better. He's doing some cool stuff with AI for hardware and for stuff. They're all in my same YC batch as well. But
West Coast base, or are
yeah.
they on the East Coast?
Let's see. I think two of them are West Coast. Jason's East Coast. He's based in New York for stuff.
Do you have any closing or lasting remarks before I wrap it up?
No, I mean, I think just like thank you so much for having me. It was a fun conversation.
course. Marisha, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for coming on. I know that this has been it's been in the works, and it's been this thing that I know that we've texted about. But thank you very much. I know that it's also our first time meeting. And this has been episode number 27 of the Young Entrepreneurs Podcast. Subscribe and leave us a review as it helps more than you know. And until next time, we'll see you.